And the first is that you start with the question. So don't just go digging around in analytics or Content Square or whatever tool it might be. You should start with the research questions that you have to answer. And that really helps you understand what research method is actually appropriate to start answering those questions, and then plan those research pieces. So you can see here we've got 3 questions that ladder up to user testing.
Looking like a baddie, I show up and make them stop. Wanna know my name so badly, cause I run this whole block. Flip my hair, move my head, show the world I'm royalty. When I walk by, they be taking bows, cause they know I'm the queen, yeah.
Hi, I'm Steph, and I'm a consultant at conversion.com. I'm here today to talk to you about starting experiment processes from scratch. And the reason I've chosen that subject today is because I've been lucky enough to do that. So in my previous role, I worked at Specsavers in the UK side of things, and I started the experiment program there and grew it over a number of years. When I moved to Conversion, I was able to see kind of different ways all different clients ran their processes and how we run our processes. And from that, I was able to establish kind of where I was falling short in the past and where I think it would be helpful for people to have hints and tips along the way. So, setting the scene a bit, if you are listening to this today, then I expect that you have an experimentation tool in place, you understand the basics of experimentation, or perhaps you have some processes but are looking to improve them. You've got buy-in from stakeholders and you're kind of ready to go, but you're either kind of starting up and don't know where to start, or you're looking to improve upon those processes. So I'm going to explain kind of my thoughts and my recommendations through the use of the scientific method today. So this is the scientific method for experimentation, and you can see you start with an observation, so something that you've seen, something that you've heard. You start to validate that with research, which can also be done vice versa, by the way. And then from that research phase, you start to hypothesize different experiments. You run the experiment and you get your conclusion, so your result, and then you share your results with your stakeholders, with whoever is kind of caring about experimentation within your business. But at different stages during this cycle, there are some really key things I think that you can do to improve your processes and enhance your strategy. So before you run any experiments, before you kind of think about doing research, before you make any observations, ideally, you are starting your experiment program, but you don't really know where to start. I think everyone should sit down and talk to their stakeholders, talk to the people that are investing in experimentation, talk to their client if you're agency side, and you need to come up with a SMART goal for experimentation. And the reason I recommend this is because it really gives your experiment program a purpose, and it means that you're always measuring the impact that your experiment program is having. Now, this is normally a revenue focused goal. It's normally a return on investment goal, so that people can really understand the value of experimentation in a monetary format. So setting a SMART goal, I think, is a really good way to get that investment and to prove to people why experimentation is important. But in order to kind of move people away from just having experimentation be a revenue focused channel, you need to split your arms into learn and earn. And what I mean by that is running some experiments in the earn arm that ladder up to your SMART goal directly, and running some experiments in your learn arm that may not ladder up to a SMART goal. But if they do, then great, you can count them towards your goal. And if they don't, well, they're a learn experiment. That's kind of the point. So I'll go into that a bit more. With Learn, the idea is that it gets people more excited about experimentation, and it shifts them from that mindset of conversion rate optimization, always pushing towards that revenue goal, to learning from experimentation. Perhaps there's business decisions that need to be made that can be de-risked via experimentation. Perhaps there's new products that you want to roll out. It takes a long time to do all of the research, to do all of the customer interviews. Maybe an experiment can help validate which products to at least start with. Or maybe there's a new feature that you want to roll out, but actually you don't have any kind of research that supports the fact that your users want it. Instead of investing all that time and money, you're going to run a learn experiment instead, and then go from there to see if it needs rolling out. So I've got an example here of what a learn experiment could potentially be. And the quote is that everyone uses PayPal. Let's introduce that to our payment method. Surely more people will purchase. So kind of classic case of they're doing it, so we should too. But not having actual real world user data from your customers directly. that kind of says that they would want PayPal and that they would use it. So in this example, you could use a learn experiment as a painted door. You could introduce PayPal as a payment method that doesn't actually work, but when the people click on it, they have a message that says, thank you for trying to use PayPal. We don't currently have that. You can always offer them a discount, a percentage off for their trouble that day. But essentially that learn experiment would tell you what percentage of users were interested in using that PayPal button, and then tell you whether that's worth investing your development team's time or the other people's time to weave it into your user journeys and have it be present on your website. So the other arm of experimentation is earn, and this is where everything ladders up to your revenue goal. It's all really driven by research. There's not really a lot of room for like opinions and de-risking here. This is your bread and butter. These are the things that give you that return on investment. And they have really strong hypotheses like this. So we know that users drop off at the card details page from analytics, and user testing revealed there's a lack of trust in the brand. We believe adding in security symbols and messaging to show the checkout is secure will result in an increase in transactions. And we'll know that by testing adding safety symbols and guarantees on the checkout page and measuring transactions. So it's really clear how you got to that hypothesis. So the research is there, what you will be testing, and then what you will be measuring to be able to measure that SMART goal. That increase in revenue will be driven by the increase in transactions. So the earn arm is there to have that ROI, to have those really focused experiments on bringing in the money and making sure that you get investment every year in experimentation. And then the learn arm is taking experimentation to the next level. It's pivoting away from CRO to experimentation and making sure that people appreciate that it's more than just a revenue driving source. Then moving into the research phase, there's a few things here that I recommend that you do.
This is Romo Santiago from Experimentation. Every week we share interviews with and conference sessions by our favorite conversion rate optimizers from around the world. So if you like this video, smash that like button and consider subscribing. It helps us a bunch. Now back to the episode.
And the first is that you start with the question. So don't just go digging around in analytics or Content Square or whatever tool it might be. You should start with the research questions that you have to answer. And that really helps you understand what research method is actually appropriate to start answering those questions, and then plan those research pieces. So you can see here we've got 3 questions that ladder up to user testing. What barriers do users experience on the sign-up flow? How do users perceive the cost of the product? And do users understand our offering from the homepage? 3 of those questions can be answered via user testing. That tells me immediately that I need to be doing some user testing. And those questions can help guide my script and help guide where those journeys are going to be without biasing those users, of course. So you can start to see how that would save you time. It's going to save effort when you're just kind of, looking around, staring at pieces of research, not really knowing what to look for. And it also means that it's going to focus your program where it needs to be focused. And then once you've got all those research pieces and you've gathered all the data, you need to make sure that it's captured in a consistent way. And what I mean by that is the best way that I've seen this done is that you write down exactly what you saw, what you observed, so the observation. And from those observations, you can start to build bigger pieces of learning. So you can see 3 here. One is my biggest concern is if the size is true, will it fit me? That's from user testing. 60% of users drop off on the PDP. That's from an analytics review. And then display a clear size guide for users to read. Sizes should be localized and model size information given. That's an expert study. Putting those 3 things together gives us the overall learning. Users need to understand the size and fit before purchasing. So you can see how those observations have started to build that bigger picture. And then using these tags, barrier, motivation, area, and source, or even others if you can think of them. These are just the ones that I like quite a bit. I can then start to conduct meta-analysis across all of my observations and insights and see where my barriers and motivations lie, perhaps where most of my issues are during the area. And you can see from this graph, we've got homepage, PLP, PDP, and basket, and you've got barriers and motivations there. Instantly, I can see the PLP is a pretty big problem. There's loads of barriers and very little motivation. And what I might want to do there is start to look at how that page differs from the basket and from the homepage, what type of information is present, what type of information is not present, and perhaps start to do kind of an analysis based on that. And you can see then that over time, this can be a pretty powerful thing to present to your clients, your stakeholders, and show, at the beginning of the year, this is what the barriers and motivations look like by area. Now we've rerun that same piece of analysis after all the experimentation to help users along their way. This is now what barriers and motivations look like. And you can see that's a really nice piece of kind of analysis to show the value that you're adding outside, again, of that revenue picture. And then thinking about the hypothesis stage. So I really recommend that you find a hypothesis framework that you like, that is good, and use it consistently. So this is the one that we use at Conversion. And the reason we use this one is because it shows you every step of coming up with that experiment and how you've ended up in that place, and then how you're going to measure it as well, which is really important for anyone who picks up an experiment halfway through, doesn't know what's happened, or anyone who's looking back at an experiment, and anyone who's new to experimentation who perhaps really doesn't understand fully the process and where experiments should come from. So you've got a supporting statement, so we know that, and that's driven by qual and quant data. And then you have the kind of belief statement, that what we think is happening. So we believe that X for X audience will result in X. So we believe changing this for that audience will result in the goal. And we'll know by testing the test executions, the exact thing on this page and observing this KPI for this duration. So that really means that you're just observing every single step of the experiment kind of process, like I say, and it means that writing it consistently in the future could mean that AI could ingest it and start to come up with other hypotheses if you allow it to ingest kind of your framework plus all of your research and data. And then I'm back on this consistency thing again. So you've got your research, you've stored it in a consistent manner, you've got your hypothesis, you're writing those in a consistent manner, but are you collecting all of that data together and your outcome in a consistent way as well? Because that can aid your future strategy too. And what I mean by that is having it in one database that's easily accessible and can be looked at quite quickly. So here you can see we've got the experiment number, the hypothesis, the execution, so what we actually did, where it ran, what the outcome was, the result, what we learned, very important, the risk profile and the size of the experiment. I particularly like the risk profile because that can aid you in your strategy, and I'll come on to that in a second. But also looking at the outcome and the result, because just because you've seen, a number of winners on something doesn't mean that the average uplift is better than kind of another area or another lever on that page. You should be looking at both to be able to establish that. And then of course your key learning is really important so that you can go back through your experiments and understand what you've actually learned from each of them. So thinking about risk profile, like I say, I really like this as a tag, and that is because it can really take you from your local maxima to your global maxima. And I've seen this happening in a client that I've been working on. So at the beginning of the program, we were running, low risk experiments, some medium risk. We were consistently getting inconclusive experiment results. When I reviewed our strategy, I looked at the win rate, I looked at the outcome versus the risk profile, and I could see that pattern of inconclusivity when it was a low risk experiment. The medium risk experiments actually had outcomes, had results, and the one high risk experiment we ran was a winner. So I thought from that data, from that meta-analysis, that our risk profile was probably off and that we needed to push more into the global maxima. So have medium and higher risk experiments that are bigger changes, different things on the website. And actually we pivoted the strategy and we started to run medium and high risk experiments, and our win rate went up and so did our average uplift. So by pivoting that strategy, we were able to then start getting the results for that client. And I'm sure there are websites out there that are experiencing the same thing. So having a risk profile can be really important to do that. You can see in this graph that you've got the winners, losers, and inconclusive rate by high risk, medium risk, and low risk. And you're able to just do that meta-analysis and understand that across time. You can compare them from quarter to quarter, and you can start to understand what is working well and what's not. Then looking at the sharing of results. So please, please, please find a tool that you can store all of your experiment learnings, all of your experiment research and insights, and all of your experiment results in a accessible and digestible way We use Airtable conversion. I really recommend it. I wish I'd had it in my old role, and I'm sure there are plenty of people, if they saw the setup that we have, that would wish they had it too. It's one database. You look at everything you could possibly want to see for that client. I can see all the experiments we've ever run, all the learnings we've ever had, anything that we've tested across each area, the risk profile, all of those things are just at my fingertips. And that is really powerful for enhancing your strategy and also being able to get other people involved in experimentation, being able to see where you're heading. Please, please, please do not just store your experiment results in a SharePoint or a Google Drive, in a PowerPoint to just die, because people don't go looking for them, or if they do, they find it really hard to look through them and understand. You need to have a really good tool for that storage. Look around, get people involved, write down what you'd want to see in that tool and start to compare the providers and understand what could be good for you. It's really a massive piece of advice. And if you have got a SharePoint or a Google Drive storing all your results, start now, redo it all. It also will future-proof you for AI. If you can find an AI tool that will digest all of those experiment results, who knows what it will be capable of in the future, but having them in a PowerPoint, it's not going to be readable in that way. So yeah, please, please, please do not leave your results to die in a SharePoint. And on that same thing around sharing results, I really recommend that you can share your results in person, over calls, in newsletters, via email, whatever that appropriate source of contact is for your stakeholders, for your clients, for your investors, whoever they are. Just make sure that you talk to them about how they'd like to be communicated to, and talk to them so you know kind of what their level of expertise is like, so you can talk to them on the right level. Don't go in all guns blazing or stats blazing, because you're going to turn a lot of people off. Do that with certain people who enjoy the stats. For other people, you're going to want to storytell. They're just going to want to know the true facts. They're going to want to see what happened, what did you test, and what did you learn. They're not going to want to know, the stats, all of the stats stuff, and be bored by 1,000 different numbers. They're going to want to know the story of the experiment, not just kind of every single piece of detail. So there's a really cool blog post on CXL about Freytag's pyramid and data stories. I really recommend you go read that. CXL also do a data storytelling course, which I believe I've done as well, and I found that really useful. Obviously, the work is never done. Whenever you are putting together an experiment summary or a piece about an experiment, there's always more to be done around trying to tell that story and trying to make it kind of more interesting and show your workings for people. But yeah, the pyramid can really help, and I recommend that you learn to communicate with different types of people in different ways. And then between the kind of conclusion, sharing the results, and starting all over again, I really recommend that you utilize the explore, exploit, fold methodology. And what I mean by that is that when you conduct your research, you start with key themes that you find. For us, a theme is a lever. And if you want to know more about the lever framework, message me separately, but I don't have time to go into it today. But thinking of the key themes within those research, and you start to validate those themes by testing minimum viable experiments where appropriate. Once you've validated one of those themes, then you can learn to iterate on that theme and start to optimize further through that theme. When you find a few more winners, you can really double down on that theme. And that's where the exploit methodology comes in. So you're basically just ringing it for all it's worth. You might be putting it on different areas of the website. You might be expanding it. You might be just pushing that concept further and further and further. Whereas when you come to explore, you're kind of just doing a few things here, a few things there within the theme, and you're seeing what results you get. And of course, the fold is when you see a few losers, or you're seeing, consistently inconclusive and losing results. That's when you might choose to fold a lever, a theme, or perhaps you might choose to pivot away from it. It really depends on the results that you're seeing. For pivoting, what I'd recommend is that you might say, we just don't have enough data to explore this enough, so we need to come back to it, and we've done some more studying. Or for folding, it's we had a lot of research, it's really not working out, we've seen multiple losers here, it's time to cut our ties, we'll fold it. So it's really dependent on your program and what you're seeing in your results. But the only way that you're going to get to use the explore, exploit, fold methodology is through iterating. And we know that iterating is one of the most powerful things you can do for your experiment program. what are the odds that your first experiment are going to be, even if it wins, is the biggest uplift you're going to experience? Probably not very high. So iterate again. Listen to the data that you're getting from those experiment results and iterate based off of it. Look at that result in depth and understand why it's happening, and then use that to iterate. So that's a lot from me, but the key things to remember are: use learn and earn to pivot from CRO to experimentation. So making sure you're learning and you're earning from your experimentation program. Create a template for writing and storing your insights, and use tags to aid your future strategy, whether that's for your insights, for your experiments, anything goes with those. You need to sit down and think about what those tags are, but use them. They can aid your future strategy. And don't leave your results to die in a SharePoint or a Google Drive, and use the explore, exploit, iterate, fold methodology. Thank you very much for listening. If you've got any questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, or if you just want to chat experimentation, I'm on LinkedIn. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
This is Romo Santiago from Experimentation. Every week we share interviews with and conference sessions by our favorite conversion rate optimizers from around the world. So if you like this video, smash that like button and consider subscribing.